We are live? Okay, all right. Well, welcome to tonight's council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. We will be joined soon by Councillor Connick. Otherwise, Councillor Ross is away and Mayor Creasy is away. So before us, we have an agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, etc.? Yes, Thea Gowdy.
I would ask if, with your indulgence, if we could move item 5.7 to item 5.1, only because that is the one and only item that Director Pichet is going to be presenting this evening, and so we would be shortening her night considerably if we're able to make that change.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I don't see any objections. I'll entertain a motion then to accept the agenda as reordered. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gibbs. I will move that we approve the agenda as amended.
All right, no further discussion, so all those in favor? And that is unanimous. All right, so that then moves us to presentations, and we have 2 presentations of new staff, so I will ask CAO Gowdy then to make our first presentation.
It's my pleasure to introduce Kim Collins, our new manager of human resources. Kim joined the city last week, November 16th. She's originally from Australia and has had a number of interesting engagements both there and abroad, including time with Oxfam New Zealand, before finding her way to Calgary. She says the weather's about the same, but the transition has been easy. While in Calgary, Kim has worked in human resources in the private sector, including the land development company, the food industry, and most recently a cannabis startup company. Kim says she's excited to come on board and learn about all the things we do for our community. So welcome to you and your puppy, Mika. And I understand you have located to Lacombe and have started experiencing all the city has to offer. So welcome.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So yeah, certainly on behalf of the city, welcome to our community and welcome on board, within this organization. Got a lot of outstanding people in this group and makes, our community very successful, and welcome to be on board with us.
Thank you so much.
All right, and then that brings us to our next presentation then, and that would be Director Thompson that's going to do the introduction.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes, thank you. Council, I also have the pleasure of introducing Nancy Hackett. She is the City of Lacomb's new Planning and Development Services Manager. Nancy is a registered professional planner with the Alberta Professional Planners Institute and the Canadian Institute of Planners, and Vision Sustainability Professional, and a member of the International Association for Public Participation. Nancy comes to us from the city of Red Deer, where she was the Environmental Initiatives Supervisor, working on sustainability plans, policies, and annual reporting. Prior to that, she was the City Planning Manager with Parkland Community Planning Services and Senior Planner with Alberta Municipal Affairs. Nancy shared that she was especially attracted to working for Lacombe, given the strong heritage preservation program and the presence in the city, the attractive walkable downtown of Lacombe, and the opportunity to support new development and balanced growth in the community. On an interesting note, Nancy also shared that her first half marathon was run in Lacombe. The beautiful trails and well-organized local volunteers left a great impression about the community. So please join me in welcoming Nancy to the organization.
Fantastic. Again, thank you on behalf of the community. I welcome you. I got the pleasure of meeting you already at MPC, so that was nice, a nice surprise. So thank you. So I echo the same sentiments, so that it's lovely to have another strong member added to the team. Planning and development is obviously a very important department, both to this council and to the city. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
All right, so we don't have any public hearings, so then we can scoot down to request for decision, and we will address that local authorities election act update first. So inviting Director Pichet then to have the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hicks. Before council tonight is the second information update of the changes to the Local Authority Election Act. Following the 2018 review of the Act and the passing of Bill 23 amendments to the Local Authority Election Act, which came into effect January of 2019, the Government of Alberta has now passed Bill 29 with royal assent in July of 2020. There still is another bill that's coming out, so there's going to be more updates and more information to provide. But attached normally where we would have our attachments in the council memo, there's actually a link to the government website that houses the fact sheets that I'll be referring to. The government of Alberta is currently updating this information regarding the new changes, and it's a good practice to possibly return back to that page on an occasional basis there, because they will be putting more updates out. Today, I'm going to just highlight some of the changes that have been made that will affect councillors. There's a lot of changes that are going to affect the returning officer and the substitute returning officer, but I tried to make it more so the ones that will affect council. So first off, nomination period is from January 1st, 2021 until noon on September 20th of 2021. Campaigning by candidates can occur all year round. You guys are not limited to anything in terms of the campaign period. So you're free to go as soon as your nominations are ready to go. So finance reporting has changed. All candidates are required to disclose the name and address of donors who contribute $50 or more. Financial disclosure statements are required by all candidates, even those who are self-funded. And any candidate who incurs $50,000 in expenses or contributions must file a review engagement as defined by the CPA standards. There are no defined spending limits at this time, and candidates may contribute up to $10,000 of their own funds to their campaign. However, a separate bank account must be opened when $1,000 in contributions are received. And this year, starting campaign surpluses greater than $1,000 must be donated to a registered charity. The donation must be disclosed within a 30-day period after the normal reporting period. So technically it's by March 31st, 2022. The maximum amount that an individual can donate to one or multiple campaigns is $5,000 in total. So for example, one person can give a councillor $5,000, or they can spread $1,000 amongst a number of councillors, but they can't surpass $5,000. Third-party advertising is an interesting new one here. So this is where an individual, a corporation, or group can oppose or promote a candidate. Any third-party advertiser who plans on spending at least $1,000 must register with the city, just like a candidate would have to as well. And we keep a register of the third-party candidates or third-party advertisers. But third-party advertisers are not able to do any campaigning until May, or are not able to advertise until May 1st, until the end of election voting. So that they're limited to a certain time frame. They also have to file a report for all their contributions, and failure to do so will result in a fine of $500. And lastly, the government of Alberta is providing training to the returning officers and substitute returning officers to handle a Senate election, as well as incorporating a referendum into the election ballot. So at this point, we don't know the content of the referendum, but they are providing the training for that this year. So this is a very quick overview of some of the changes to the Local Authorities Election Act. Legislative Coordinator Pettibone and myself will be preparing a page on the city's website with all the election information and forms that candidates will need, as well as we'll be preparing nomination packages to be ready in the early part of January. If there are any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to Legislative Coordinator Pettibone or myself, and we'll be happy to gather any information that you'll need. And basically tonight, we're just providing this information as this report is information, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Hoekstra.
I move that council accept this update on the Local Authorities Election Act as information.
Any further questions or comments? Does not look like it. All right, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as information. Thank you. All right, so then that brings us back to the previous order of things, so that would be safety codes contract renewal. Director Thompson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Safety Codes Council accredits the City of Lacombe to administer electrical, plumbing, gas, and building permits per the Safety Codes Act. Under contract with Lacombe, IJD Inspections Limited provides safety codes officers who are appropriately certified and designated to review, inspect, and ultimately sign off on these permits. The term for the city's agreement with IJD ends May 31st, 2021. Administration recommends council renew the agreement for another 4-year period to May 2025 with the same terms and conditions. For council's information, in March earlier this year, the city passed the routine safety code audit of permitting and inspection services. This audit is conducted by the Safety Codes Council, and IJD was instrumental and involved in that process. Also for council's information, the previous inspections contractor, Superior Safety Codes, held the contract with the City of Lacombe for approximately 10 years. And it did take about 3 to 4 years to transition from Superior Safety Codes to IJD. And so the city is not recommending making a transition or considering transition at this time. However, should council renew the contract with IJD, administration will consider an RFP for safety code services at the end of that term to seek out market rates for new contractors. And so there's no changes to the market rate or any of the terms and conditions for IJD for the next 5 years. 4 years.
Thank you, Director Thompson.
That's it. So yeah.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Galaxy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. I'll move that council directs administration to renew the existing safety code service agreement with IJD Inspections for a further 4-year term.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. I guess I was curious what prompted the change in what are they called, providers? 4 years ago or so that we should be aware of now that would potentially prompt a change again. Does that make sense? Like, why did we change 4 years ago, and are any of those symptoms in place, like, are happening now? Or is it all good? Does that make sense?
I think so. I wasn't directly involved in the decision to change, but I can say that IJD staff are certainly satisfied with IJD. They've, especially through the audit process, they've demonstrated a commitment to work with us to address some of the items in the action plan coming out of the audit. And in fact, they have helped us do so. So in terms of are there any symptoms that would lead to us changing, I would say there's nothing like that now.
That's good.
Okay. Councillor Jacobson.
So I can speak to it a little bit because this happened before I was elected, and when I can speak to it, experiencing the other end of what happens from the permitting side. I can tell you, so IJD is by far and away the most seamless and best company for doing these inspections of all the ones that provide in Central Alberta I've got experience with, and that in and of itself just creates a very good impression for the city. It's insanely, mind-numbingly, terribly frustrating for contractors when they put in for permits and, they're 3-4 weeks later, something happened, they get lobbied like that. IJD really goes above and beyond to just get it out the door. So I believe that was part of the concern with the previous service provider as well too, but I was not involved in any other capacity other than just looking at it from the outside previously.
Any other questions? I do have one. You did comment that that transition took quite a few years. I'm just wondering why that is. Can you explain what caused that transition?
Yeah, sure. So when a file is opened and Superior, for instance, had a number of files on their desk, it just took 3-4 years for either those builds or those projects to reach a certain milestone so that they could continue on and complete those inspections. So instead of severing those files halfway through or those bills halfway through and reassigning and transferring that information to a new inspection company, Superior held on to those contracts, and it just took that long. And so for 3-4 years, staff were working under kind of two systems, and that was the reason for the longer transitionary period.
Very good, thank you. All right, there is a motion on the floor unless anybody has any further questions. Does not appear to be so. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, that takes us to third quarter financial report, and I would invite Manager Riaz to present the report, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gibbs. Tonight, administration is presenting to council the third quarter financial report. Typically, to the end of the third quarter, about 75% of the annual budget has been realized. The current year, municipal operations and finances have been directly impacted by COVID-19. So I will start my presentation by highlighting a few items under revenues. To the end of September, total revenues are trending down by approximately 408,000, or 1.1% of the year-to-date budget. The decrease in revenue is mainly due to lower utility fees, which account for approximately 496,000. So it actually exceeds the amount that you see, that 408. There is also a drop in user fees, and that's mainly in departments such as the police, as well as recreational facilities such as the arena, pool, and LNC. Revenue from other local agencies is also lower than budgeted, mainly due to the new ICF agreement, which came a little bit under budget due to the new model. However, not everything in revenues is bad news. There is some good news. Investment revenue, it will be seeing a surplus of around 300,000. And other revenues from other sources, you normally see a surplus in that area. And that's because that includes the sale of vehicles and equipment, and normally there is no budget for that. Now, I will be highlighting some of the expenses. So when it comes to expenses, you see that under Appendix 1 that expenses are down by, Appendix 2, expenses are down by 924 or 2.8%. When it comes to expenses, there is timing differences, and about 1/3 of that relates to the non-residential portion of the education amounts, which is going to be paid until December, as well as there is some amounts in the affordable housing grant that have not yet been paid, but we expect to pay them in the third quarter. So when we take those into account, it'll become a smaller amount. However, revenues are still going to be down from what we budgeted. Salaries will have a surplus, and right now the surplus is around 314,000. By year end, we expect that amount to be fairly close, but we gotta remember that there is an amount there that relates to utilities, which means that not all of it will flow into surplus. We estimate that the amount from salaries will be around 250 to 275,000. And it's mainly due to temporary layoffs, delayed recruitments, approved leave of absences, and reorganization initiatives. There is also a decline in goods and services, and that is mainly due to lower cost in travel, training and development, and other professional fees. The amount that you see there as a variance is 554,000. That amount is expected to be lower by the end of the year, mainly because we have more activity in the last quarter, And also we have accruals that we do, which means that some expenses that are paid in 2021 will be expenses that have been incurred in 2020. For the end of the year, administration is forecasting to have a surplus of somewhere between 400 and 600,000. And as I mentioned in my report, that does not include the grant that we received from the provincial government to assist with COVID-related costs. I will now highlight really quick some of the tax and utility collections. As of the end of September, we have collected 77% of taxes levied in 2020. And the total outstanding balance is 4.9 million. Those funds, the majority of those funds are expected to be collected in December when taxes are due. When it comes to the total utility revenue outstanding, we have a balance of 1.1 million. And that includes approximately 197,000 balance in arrears. The recommended motion tonight is that council accept this report as information. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Senior Manager Reyes. Do we have any questions? Councilor Khan.
Well, I'd like to make the motion to begin with, that the council accepts the report as information. I find it rather encouraging, the projected surplus given the year that we've had. But how will that play out if we are in arrears? Will some of that money go towards, I'm assuming some of that money will go towards covering any tax deficiencies we have at the end of the year? I'm guessing no? Or?
Sorry, so you're talking about taxes, correct?
Sorry?
You're talking about taxes?
That's right, yeah.
So at the end of the year, any taxes that remain outstanding will become arrears and they will be subject to tax penalty. We typically don't do anything for 1 year. They remain in arrears.
Right.
They just collect penalties. After 1 year, they go on the list and then we can proceed further if we need to, such as selling property if we need to. But that typically takes some time.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilor Gullickson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. So we have approximately $2 million in surplus with the grant from the government, is that correct?
It can be as high as that. The amount of revenue that will be recognized from the grant, from the 1.4 million grant, will depend on a number of factors that we'll take into account by the end of the year. At this point, we don't know if we are gonna be recognizing the entire amount or most of it, for example. There can be a portion that may be deferred to 2021.
CEO Gowdy.
Specifically, costs due to COVID or lost revenue due to COVID up to March 31st are all eligible expenses. So outstanding taxes that haven't been paid at that time could be eligible. So the majority of it, not the majority, to get to that $2 million valuation for a surplus would rely on the full realization of all that revenue in 2020. You might actually then withdraw some from your operating reserve potentially in 2021 to offset some of those COVID-related costs. So, and many municipalities, I would suspect almost all municipalities in Alberta will be in this spot where you are recognizing higher than expected revenue in 2020 for a surplus, and then using that likely operating reserve contribution to offset costs in 2021.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, that was my point, is that I was thinking that we're gonna need some of that money at a future date possibly because of the taxation issues and other related expenses that we may not even be aware of yet. So, I mean, it looks like a lot of money to right now, but it may not be that much when we get done with this. So we can use it for taxes or lost tax revenue.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Khan.
But just to be clear though, the 1.4 we get irregardless of what our surplus is.
No, not necessarily regardless of circumstance. It has to be, there's an obligation for it to be used for specifically for purposes identified within the grant program. And there is a provision there that the provincial government can reclaim unused portions or portions that aren't used for the specific purposes in the grant program.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up if I may. So, but we will be allowed to bank some of it for 2021 or 2022 rather?
Yes and no. It is a tough, so the province has been sort of wonderfully streamlined about it, but also a bit coy in that way. And so they've said, no, we can reclaim it at any time, but when pressed for details about what the statement of financial expenditures will look like, what that prescribed form that they talk about is, they aren't able to give details. They said, oh, it'll be similar to MSI, and then they recently sent out something actually that was interestingly specific and explicit about not requiring any documentation from the municipality to compare one cost to another. And I would say led me to believe it will be very loose in terms of reporting. Putting it in another way, we already have the full 1.4 in our hands.
Okay.
It's actually in the bank already. So there is these provisions for the province to reclaim it. From what it is looking like, I think that's really unlikely. I think it is going to be as close to a no strings attached type grant as we see. But we have no guarantees of that.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
I do have a couple of questions as well. I'm not sure who would be the best to answer this, but for example, so Department 21, which would be 18 of your council agenda, it's the police department. One of the comments was under revenues that the collection of fines has seen a significant decrease during this quarter. The collections of fines will likely be under budget, et cetera, et cetera. Why specifically this quarter has the fine collection been down? Do we have any speculation as to why that would be?
To be honest, I would expect that is a carryover of a comment from the prior quarterly report, and that it is more like, excuse me, 6 months of downed or even 3 quarters of downed collection. Is that a fair? You don't have the previous ones before you, but I'm sure it's more than a quarter that they've been down.
Okay. So like
Basically, the way I understand it, fines are issued, and whenever the times that we recognize those fines, it's when we get paid.
okay.
In the last few months, because of COVID, we have seen a slowdown in payments, and that's basically what the comment is trying to explain, that it hasn't recovered yet. We're not seeing collections jump up to normal levels yet. Still down.
All right, thank you. Then skipping ahead to Department 42, so that'd be page 30 of 104. This isn't necessarily specific to this, it was just under expenses, under goods and services, it talks about no manhole rebuilds were completed in 2020. That in itself isn't particularly interesting, but it made me think about some of the other things that we would normally have done on an annual basis that we perhaps did not do this year. So when we're talking about expenses, like going forward, we're gonna have to potentially play catch up. For example, the cracks in the roads, I believe were not done this year. That either means that we're doing, I don't know, double next year, how that works. But it's just more of a comment, I guess, more than a question. But So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Then I'm just gonna skip ahead. I think I have one more, and if not, then I'll let you off the hook and we'll go back to our motion. Oh, no, that is it. All right, perfect. All right, so we do have a motion on the floor from Councillor Connick to accept this as information. Are there any further questions before I call the question? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, so then that brings us to utility bylaw 393.4, and Senior Manager Reyes, you're on the hot seat again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gibbs. On November 9th, Council adopted the 2021 operating budget, which included a 3% increase in water and wastewater user fees. At the same time, the budget indicated that solid waste fees are being maintained at the current levels. Under the new rates, an average household will see an increase in the utility bill of around $4.12 per month for a total of $49.44 for the entire year, as can be seen in appendix. Number 2, tonight, administration is presenting an amendment to the utility bylaw for council consideration. I would like to advise council that a full review of this bylaw is underway and will be presented to council in 2021. Upon passing the bylaw amendment, the new rates will be effective January 1st, 2021. The recommended motion for tonight is that council give first reading to bylaw 393.4. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council? Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. Mine is more of a comment. I find it odd that because we use less water, that's somehow a bad thing. And so now we have to raise rates the year after. That's kind of one of my takeaways. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but.
Or CAO Gowdy?
No, that is right. You were reading that right. So the issue is that when we do our budget, there's certain fixed costs, and you spread those fixed costs over the full expected sales. So if you say, I have $1,000 of fixed costs and I expect I'm gonna sell 100 cubic meters next year, then you apply $10 per cubic meter to your fixed cost. And then if it comes out and you only actually sell 90 cubic meters, you only collect 900 of the $1,000 you need for your fixed costs, and thus the next year you need to both correct the mistake you originally made in your estimate, plus eat the overage that you had from the last year because of your estimating mistake. You as me in this case, that's my mistake.
Follow up, Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. So by that token then, so they say next year we use way more water, then by virtue our rate should go down the year after? Yeah, no, that's not.
Well, you will over collect, and so your utility will be in a slightly less unhealthy position the year after.
Yeah.
I haven't seen utility rates get lowered very often in my time.
Any other questions? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. The motion is not on the floor yet, is that
It
correct?
has not been made yet.
I'll make that motion then.
Okay.
That council, let's give first reading to, what was the numbers on my iPad nicely just.
3934.
There, first reading to bylaw 393.4.
Perfect, thank you. All right, last opportunity for a question. Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, and to finish the hat trick, we have tax penalty bylaw 379.2, Senior Manager Reyes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gibbs. In the spring of 2020, Council approved the deferral of the deadline for property taxes levied in 2020 from June 30th to December 31st as a financial relief initiative aimed at assisting City of Lacombe residents and businesses financially impacted by COVID-19. At the November 9th meeting, Council adopted a 2021 operating budget, which includes $180,000 in penalties on taxes. Tonight, administration is presenting Bylaw 379.2 for Council's first reading and consideration. The main change that you will see is on Appendix 1, Schedule A. And the main difference that you will see in Appendix A compared to what it was prior to COVID is the rate for July 1st has been changed from 9% to 10%. And that's based on keeping the rates more consistent. That's one of the comments that we received from Council previously. So instead of having a 9% and a 10%, now we have 10% on July 1st and 10% on January 1st, which is the arrears rate. Other than that, all the rates and all the dates are the same as they used to be. So with that, the motion is, the recommended motion is that Council give first reading to Bylaw 379.2, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council? We're getting off easy. Oh, Councillor Gillison.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. I'll move that council give first reading to Bylaw 379.2.
Okay. Just before we call that to vote, I do have one question. Should, for example, that, I don't know, circumstances deteriorate again and we are potentially asked to consider reinstating what we had done last year, like making the exception, moving the due date back, we can still do that at a later date, like we did last time, because we made that change in June, or I think approximately. So I'm not suggesting that we need to do that, but just so that people are aware that I suppose it could happen again, not saying it will. All right, I don't have any further comments or questions, so the motion is on the floor. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, so then that moves us then to advertising bylaw 482. I have Director Duke as speaking to this.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Hibbs and Council. Sorry, I was on Teams, but I didn't have a chance to test my microphone for feedback. Thought I better come in instead. Regarding the advertising bylaw presented to Council tonight is first reading of Bylaw 482 to provide the municipality the option to advertise through electronic means in addition to or as a substitute for print media or mail or other delivery. Advertising is related to matters where the Municipal Government Act requires that we notify the public. So this is for statutory notices. Currently, prior to 2018, the Municipal Government Act required the city to advertise public hearings, certain proposed bylaws, council meetings, and the like through advertising in newspapers, local print media for 2 consecutive weeks, and or through mail or other delivery method. In 2018, the MG was amended to allow a municipality to use electronic publication as a substitute, for example, by posting notices on the city's website, if council provides for this through bylaw. This opportunity to use an alternative way to publish would be crucial if the municipality experiences a state of local emergency and area newspapers are not able to publish or distribute. An advertising bylaw such as what's presented to council tonight must be the subject of a public hearing between first and second readings. So administration is looking for 2 resolutions tonight. The first to give first reading to this bylaw and the second to set a public hearing for January 11th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Happy to address any questions council may have.
Thank you, Director Jukes. Are there any questions? Someone's prepared to make that first motion. Councillor Wickstrom.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. I would move that council give first reading to advertising bylaw 482.
Seeing no further hands up, all those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And for that second motion, Councillor Jacobson.
I move that council schedule a public hearing for advertising bylaw 482 at 5:30 p.m. on January 11, 2021.
Perfect, all right, all those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, that moves us down our agenda then to Cemetery Bylaw Amendment 356.2, Director Duke.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. Presented to council tonight is first reading of bylaw 356.2, which is a bylaw to amend the city's cemetery bylaw 356. The 14 or so amendments proposed in this draft bylaw will align the cemetery bylaw with current public expectations and needs and with administration's experiences operating Fairview Cemetery since the last update of the bylaw about 8 years ago. The report covering this amending bylaw summarizes the bulk of the amendments on its second and third pages. And as I mentioned, there's approximately 14 of them. And that's just a summary of the provisions as they are presented in the bylaw. And so I'd be happy to take any questions council may have on this amending bylaw.
All right, are there any questions? Councillor Connick.
Just under definitions, number 2 there, adding a potential for residents who are required to legal counselor or people acting on their behalf, but that's irrelevant if you bought your, isn't that irrelevant if you bought your grave long before you left town? Like people can buy in advance too, right? And if they move away, it's not like they're gonna lose the plot.
That's correct. If they have purchased the plot as a resident and then they move away, they're living elsewhere, the only thing that will change is when they come back to be interred, that the opening and closing fees will be as for a non-resident.
Oh, I see.
But primarily, the difficulty in the current bylaw is that the last amending bylaw defined resident as someone who pays rates here, rates and taxes, which of course doesn't include renters or anyone like that. So there was a difficulty there. And the other issue also is for those who temporarily move away or that are required to move away as the definition demonstrates.
Any follow-up? Yes, Councillor Connick.
No, just that I would like to make the motion and that council gives first reading of 356.2 as presented and directs administration to return to the bylaw to the December 7, 2020 regular council meeting. No, we don't need additional information.
In the report covering the bylaw, there was a suggestion that some stakeholder input might be appropriate, for example, from the Lacombe County, because they are co-funders of the Fairview Cemetery. So it would just be a matter of course to send it to them, get their commentary.
And that's fine, as presented in the motion.
So the motion as
As
read in, okay. All right, thank you, Councillor Connick. Last chance for any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. All right. So we've already done 5.7, so then that moves us into information, administrative reports.
Thank you,
Video Gowdy.
Yes. My administrative report is there. It's short because, of course, I just given one on the 11th or so. So I did want to let you know that we've received that $1.4 million in funding from the province for the municipal operating sustainability transfer. And at the time of this writing, we had 19 active community cases. We are now at 17, I believe, as of 3:30 today. So we were moving in the right direction and then a jump today in the wrong direction. So we will wait to see what the premier announces tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll be meeting to talk about it from there.
Any questions? Councillor Hoekstra, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. What's this key performance indicators project? What, the meeting with contract?
So council had requested that we move ahead with the development of key performance indicators. That's a high priority task in your strategic plan. And so we did have some funding set aside for that in 2020. Likely some of it will carry over to 2021, but we have started our project to develop those key performance indicators. We'll be looking to develop a dashboard of approximately 10 to 12 key performance indicators for council to review on a regular basis, probably a monthly basis, to have some information more readily available at your fingertips there.
We did not have this before, though. This is brand new. Or,
Correct, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say you haven't had it. There has been things that have been reported on. So the quarterly reporting, for example, financials are a key performance indicator, but what we took the strategic goal to be was a more comprehensive view that looks at more than just finances. For example, we look at building permits and maybe the amount of snow that was cleared in the last month, that sort of thing.
thank you.
Any other questions for Sigeo Gowdy? Does not appear to be, so then we will move on. There is nothing in the council mailbox. That moves us then down to commission board committee reports. So we have the Lacombe Police Commission meeting minutes of October 15th. Were there any questions, or perhaps Councillor Conick has a comment on it? No? All right. That is the only one of those. Refresh my memory if we do those separate from councillor reports. We don't, we do it all information.
All
Okay.
in one, yeah.
All right, so we do have a few submitted, three specifically. I would invite, let's see, Councillor Gullickson to comment on his report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a few items, library board meeting, abbreviated Lacombe Days meeting. The Lacombe Days committee, as you know, is down to just a few people. So if you know anybody interested in that, it'd be nice to get a few more members on that board. And then an MPC meeting that we approved one item and added our new member, Tyler Nowichin, to the board. And that's my report as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Gullickson? Does not appear to be so. Councillor Hoekstra, do you have any comments on your report?
I do not. It is as presented.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Councillor Hoekstra? Do Councillor Jacobson or Conick have anything to report on? No? Okay.
Oh, I have one question for you, Councillor Hoekstra, on yours. It says here the gala, they're thinking about doing that way in the future.
Yes.
That'd be disappointing. I think I like that event, so I'd like to see it back to the way it was.
I'll pass that feedback on.
Yeah.
I guess they were just really pleasantly surprised with how well it went this way. Yeah, so.
Okay. All right, and my report was also included. I don't really have any additional comments on anything, I don't think. Oh, I do have a question though for Councillor Gullickson. Well, I don't know if it's really a question for you per se, it's maybe more admin. So I happen to be on the volunteer page on the city website, and we have, I think it's 3 different positions open right now. The Lacombe Days came up as saying Lacombe Days Managed or something like that. So to me, if I didn't know they're looking for people, it would actually look like it's not really an issue, like we don't need anybody. Does that make sense? I don't, it was just an odd phrasing, I guess. So perhaps it's just a little typo or something, but if maybe that wants to get looked at, because we do really need people to get on that committee. Sigeo Gowdy.
So I absolutely can have a look at that. The issue there is that the Lacombe Days Committee actually is not a city committee. It's a completely separate board. And so they actually handle their own recruitment. We have it on there to support them however we can. And I'm just trying to pull it up.
Okay, yeah, it's on our page, like before you click on it to send you wherever you get sent to, but just how it's just literally written, you'll see, I think, if you find it, unless it's been changed since I saw, but I literally looked at it like 3 days ago, maybe, like it was really recent. It just, it seemed odd.
I am on it right here. If you click that Macomb Days Managed, it does take you to the Macomb Days website where they talk about all their volunteer terms and how to apply and everything.
Mhm.
And so just with it being a different process than the city managed ones, that's why it does look a little bit different.
I wonder if we could maybe, if we're able to change that, because like I said, honestly, to me, I think that says to me, don't bother clicking on it. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm just odd, but I don't know. I know I don't, but I'm sorry.
I thought you agreed that she was
No, I
all.
wasn't. No, I'm sorry, maybe I was like.
Yeah, you're on, yeah.
What we can do is make sure that it has that same wording of open until filled for
There.
the application
Sure.
deadline.
That sounds good.
Clerk Ross, if you could make a note there to under application deadline, we'll add open until filled.
Certainly, I can have that done for tomorrow.
Sure. We just need that to be as inviting as possible, because we need people on that committee, so.
Understood, thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the end of that section, so we do need a motion then. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hibbs. I move that we accept the information as information.
Perfect.
Love that motion.
I'm assuming there's no further comments. I don't see anything. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. That takes us to the adoption of the minutes. Minutes of November 9th regular council meeting are before you. Have there been any errors or omissions that have been noticed by anyone? And if not, I will take a motion, or even if there is, I'll take a motion. Councillor Jacobson.
I move we adopt the November 9, 2020 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Perfect. So no further comment. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. All right, there are no notices of motion, so that would bring us then to in camera. I will entertain an in camera. Councillor Conick.